The string lights glittered above me, their glow reflected in the untouched glasses of champagne. I stood on the small engagement stage, my hands shaking around a microphone that suddenly felt too heavy. Every table in the hall was set, candles lit, roses arranged, placed cards written in perfect cursive. But not a single guest sat in the chairs. Before we begin, drop a comment and tell us where are you from and from which city you're watching our videos. And after watching the whole video, don't forget to tell us what would you do in this situation. Be honest. Tell me in the comments below. We read every comment. Let's begin. Beautiful, isn't it? Mom's voice drifted up from the front row. Cold, smooth, sharp. She didn't even bother hiding her smirk. All this for no one. Maybe that should tell you something, Grace. I blinked back the sting in my eyes. People are probably on their way. Traffic's. Oh, don't embarrass yourself. She cut in. You really thought people would show up to your engagement? Please. You're not that important. Her laughter, light, cruel, echoed in the hollow space. My father didn't look up from his phone. My sister leaned against the pillar, whispering something that made her laugh. Too, it all felt like a scene rehearsed to humiliate me. I looked down at the ring on my finger. Simple silver. A promise I'd once believed meant something. My fiancé Andrew was supposed to arrive 20 minutes ago, maybe longer. My chest tightened. Mom stepped closer, her perfume thick and sweet, masking the venom in her tone. Face it, Grace. You've always been the afterthought. Even your fiancé probably realized what everyone else already knows, that he can do better. The words lodged like glass in my throat. I took a step back, gripping the mic. My hands were cold. My voice was softer than I wanted, but steady. You don't get to define my worth, Mom. Not tonight. Her brows arched, amused. Worth. Honey, worth is what fills seats. The hall went silent again. Only the hum of the air conditioning filled the space, and then a deep rumble rolled from outside. Engines. Not one, not two, a line of them. The vibration carried through the marble floor, shaking the glasses on every table. People turned toward the double doors. Mom frowned, confused. What is that? She murmured. Headlights flashed through the glass entrance as the sound grew louder. My heart pounded. Then the doors opened. Not just one, but both. Swung wide by men in black suits. A motorcade of SUVs lined the driveway outside. Security stepped in first, earpieces glinting under the chandeliers. Then came the guests, one after another. Men in tailored suits, women in elegant gowns, all walking in with the kind of confidence that made the room shrink. Gasps rippled across the hall. And then he walked in. Andrew. Not in the casual gray suit I'd seen him in last week, but in a black tuxedo that looked like it belonged to someone important. Someone untouchable. Behind him, more cars pulled in, and even I froze when I saw who stepped out. City officials, 2 news anchors. The CEO of Donovan Holdings, Andrew's father. Mom's face drained of color. Wait, that Donovan, she whispered. Andrew reached me in 3 long strides. He took the mic from my trembling hand, his voice calm and steady. Sorry we're late, he said, his gaze sweeping over the stunned room. We had to wait for the motorcade to clear the main road. Mom's jaw fell open. Andrew looked at her. Not cry, just matter of fact. Mrs. Carter, I told Grace we wanted to keep things quiet tonight, but my family insisted on making it public. They don't do small events. The silence was deafening. He turned to me, his tone softening. You ready to start the real engagement now? And in that single moment, standing in the same hall that had felt like a cage minutes ago, I realized I wasn't the one people should have been pitying. The air in that hall turned electric. Like the moment before thunder breaks, every chandelier sparkled harder. Every eye fixed on Andrew, as if the mere mention of Donovan had rewritten the night itself. Moments ago, I was a forgotten girl on an empty stage. Now my name was whispered behind manicured hands. Mom stood frozen beside the front table, her glass of champagne trembling ever so slightly. You're a Donovan, she stammered, the words catching in her throat like disbelief refusing to leave her mouth. Andrew gave a polite nod. Andrew Donovan. Yes. My family couldn't attend earlier because of security delays, but we didn't want Grace to feel alone tonight. That single line, "We didn't want Grace to feel alone," was a quiet earthquake. My mother's smirk died. My father finally looked up from his phone. My sister dropped her perfect little smirk, eyes darting toward me with something close to panic. Security lined the entryway, and more guests stepped in. Every one of them looked like someone who'd been on the cover of a magazine. Powerful, poised, untouchable. They didn't glance at my family. They went straight to me. "Miss Carter," a man said warmly, shaking my hand. "We've heard so much about you. Andrew talks about you constantly." I blinked, stunned. He does. Andrew smiled from beside me. Maybe too much. My mother's voice cracked the moment like a whip. "You could have told us who your family was," she snapped, forcing out a brittle laugh. "We would have made proper arrangements." Andrew turned toward her, polite but sharp. "Mrs. Carter, if I told you, this would have been a business event, not a celebration." Grace didn't need arrangements. She needed sincerity. The weight of his words hung heavy. My mother's lips pressed into a thin line. My father cleared his throat and tried to stand tall as if we're claiming control. "Well, Andrew," he said stiffly, "you should have let us handle the invitations. It seems we had some confusion." I glanced around the hall. Every table once empty, now filled with guests who weren't invited by my family, but by Andrew's. And somehow that made it sweeter. Confusion. Andrew's tone remained calm, but his gaze cut sharp. "You mean the fact that Grace's own engagement party had no guests?" That kind of confusion. My father flinched, caught off guard. "It's not what you think." "I think," Andrew said evenly. "It's exactly what I think. But that's fine, I came prepared." He nodded toward one of the security men. Within seconds, staff began wheeling in an entirely new set of catering carts, floral arrangements, and elegant gift boxes stamped with a silver D. The air filled with the scent of fresh white lies. "My favorite flower." My mother whispered under her breath. "This can't be happening." Oh, but it was. One of Andrew's associates approached the stage with a microphone and smiled. "Ladies and gentlemen," he announced, "thank you for joining us on short notice. We're honored to celebrate the engagement of Mr. Andrew Donovan and Miss Grace Carter." Applause erupted. Real applause this time. My throat tightened. The same stage that had humiliated me now shimmered with light and music. Andrew held out his hand. "Come on," he said quietly. "You deserve your moment." I took it. As we stepped onto the stage, my heart pounded against my ribs. But for the first time, it wasn't from fear. The lights glowed golden. Cameras flashed. Guests cheered. Andrew slipped an arm gently around my waist. Respectful, steady, as if to remind me that this moment wasn't about power. It was about being seen. "Ladies and gentlemen," he said into the mic, his voice firm and composed. "Tonight's celebration isn't about wealth, status, or last names. It's about recognizing someone who's been overlooked far too long. Someone who's taught me more about strength than anyone in my world of boardrooms ever could." My mother's expression cracked like porcelain. He turned to me, voice softening. "When I met Grace, she was working 2 jobs, helping strangers more than herself, and still managing to smile like she had the whole world figured out. And I knew right then she wasn't just someone I wanted to marry. She was someone I wanted to protect, because she didn't even realize how powerful she already was." A hush swept the hall. The emotion caught in my chest like fire. I blinked fast, trying to stay composed. But when I looked at my parents, I saw their eyes darting between each other, regret mixing with disbelief. Mom forced a laugh, desperate to save face. "Oh well, that's our Lily for you. Always surprising us." Andrew didn't even glance at her. "I'm sure she has," he said, then turned to me, ready for the surprise. My brows furrowed. What surprise? He snapped his fingers. The lights dimmed and a massive LD screen flickered on behind us. A short video began to play, showcasing photos and clips of me volunteering at community drives, organizing small-town charity events, and working late nights on my art projects. Andrew had secretly documented everything I'd done, moments I never thought anyone noticed. Tears stung my eyes. He leaned close enough for only me to hear. I told my media team the world should see the woman I'm marrying, not the version people tried to shrink. The video ended with a still photo, me handing food to a little girl outside a community shelter. The caption beneath it read, "The Heart of Donovan Holdings." Applause erupted again. Cameras flashed. My mother stood stiffly, hands clasped too tightly to hide her shaking. My father's face went pale. My sister stared at the screen, mouth slightly open. Andrew raised my hand to his lips and kissed it gently. "Now they all know," he whispered, "who you are and who they should have never underestimated." The crowd rose in a standing ovation. I looked out at the sea of faces, and in the front row, my mother stood speechless, stripped of every word she'd ever used to make me feel small. She had once told me no one would show up for me. But tonight, an entire world had, and this time she couldn't laugh it away. The applause roared through the hall like a wave. For a moment, I just stood there, lost in it, not because of the sound, but because I knew every clap was proof that I hadn't imagined my worth. Andrew squeezed my hand gently, grounding me back to reality. But not everyone was clapping. My mother's frozen smile twitched at the edges. Her knuckles were white around her champagne glass. My father's phone was lowered now. His business, like composure, cracked. My sister pretended to check her lipstick, but her eyes never left me. They were burning with something sharp and sour. Andrew leaned down slightly. "You still want to stay?" I took a breath. "No, but I'm not leaving first." He grinned proud. "Good answer." The press lights flickered from the back of the room. Photographers lined up by the archway, capturing the moment like it belonged on tomorrow's headlines. The once empty tables were now full of powerful people raising glasses, whispering my name like they'd known me all along. That's when Mom finally approached. Her heels clicked against the marble, her face arranged in a perfect social smile, the kind she wore when she wanted something. "Sweetheart," she said softly, her tone suddenly drenched in honey. "Can we talk just for a moment?" I glanced at Andrew. He gave me a small nod and stepped aside, though his eyes stayed on me like a silent guard. Mom's voice dropped to a whisper. "Listen about what I said earlier. You know how I can be when I'm stressed. I didn't mean to tell me I wasn't important." I asked quietly. Her smile faltered. "Grace, I didn't realize who Andrew really was." There it was. The truth laid bare in 7 words. My chest ached, but not from hurt anymore, from clarity. So if he wasn't a Donovan, I'd still be standing on that stage alone while you laughed at me. Mom blinked rapidly, the tears she was forcing now, sparkling under the lights. "I just wanted what's best for you." "No," I said, my voice steady sharp. "You wanted what looked best for you." She inhaled shakily. "Grace, please. People are watching." "Good," I said, meeting her eyes without flinching. "Let them." For the first time, she looked small. The woman who always towered over me with judgment now stood there, lost and cornered by her own reflection in the glass walls. The music softened as Andrew walked back over, his arms sliding protectively around my shoulders. "Everything okay?" he asked. Mom tried to smile again, her voice trembling. "Of course, just a little overwhelmed by everything. You two really put on a show tonight." Andrew's expression was unreadable. "It's not a show, Mrs. Carter. It's what Grace deserves. What she's always deserved." She nodded quickly, eyes darting away. "Of course," but I caught the flicker of something else. Embarrassment, maybe even shame. For once, she didn't have control. The crowd began chanting our names. Andrew looked at me, eyes warm, "One dance." I nodded, and he led me onto the floor. The music swelled, cameras flashed, and as we spun beneath the lights, I saw my reflection in the ballroom mirror. No longer the quiet girl desperate for approval, but someone who finally knew her own power. Across the room, my mother sat down slowly, her hands clasped, face pale. My father leaned close to her, whispering something, but she didn't move. She just stared at the stage like she couldn't recognize her own daughter anymore. And maybe that was the point. Because the girl who once stood alone, waiting for others to value her, she was gone. What remained was a woman who didn't need their validation, their presence, or their applause to exist. And for the first time in my life, I smiled not because I was proving them wrong, but because I didn't have to anymore. When I woke the next morning, the first thing I saw was sunlight spilling across the marble floor of Andrew's penthouse. Quiet, warm, unbothered. My phone buzzed non-stop on the nightstand. Missed calls, messages, tags. My name was everywhere. Grace Carter, the woman who stole the city's heart. The dawn of an engagement that shocked everyone. And my favorite, the empty party that turned into a legend. Andrew stood by the window talking softly on his phone. His reflection in the glass looked every bit the man the world now knew him to be. Calm, powerful, yet somehow entirely focused on me. When he hung up, he smiled. "You're trending on half the news sites in the country." I laughed quietly. That's one way to start the day. He stepped closer, brushing a strand of hair from my face. "You handled yourself perfectly last night. I've never seen someone hold their ground like that." I looked up at him. I wasn't holding ground, Andrew. I was taking it back. He grinned, pride flickering in his eyes. "And you did." But my phone buzzed again, Mom, followed by Dad. Then Sophie, my sister. I stared at the screen for a moment, the ache of old wounds trying to rise again before I set it back down. Andrew tilted his head. "You're not going to answer." "No," I said softly. "Not yet. Some silences are worth keeping." A knock came at the door. One of Andrew's assistants stepped in, carrying a sleek black envelope. "From the Donovan Foundation," she said politely. "It's for Miss Carter." Inside was a letter on thick white stationery, and a key to our future daughter-in-law. "The community center you've been volunteering at will now operate under the Carter Initiative, fully funded indefinitely. Consider it a gift for the heart you've shown this city." My breath caught. They named it after me. Andrew nodded, smiling. "Dad's idea," he said. "Real strength isn't about legacy. It's about compassion. You've got both." Tears blurred my vision before I could stop them. I don't even know what to say. "Say nothing," he whispered. "Just keep being you." Later that afternoon, we drove back to my parents' house. Andrew had suggested it gently. "Closure," he said, and I knew he was right. The mansion looked smaller than I remembered, stripped of the power it once held over me. Mom opened the door before we could knock. Her face was tired, her eyes red. "Grace," she breathed, like saying my name might undo the things she'd done. Dad stood behind her, silent. My sister peeked from the hallway, pretending she wasn't listening. "I saw the news," Mom said softly. You were incredible last night." I nodded, polite. "Thank you." She hesitated, twisting her fingers. I wanted to say I'm sorry for everything, for the way I spoke to you, for not seeing who you really are." Her voice cracked, and for the first time it sounded real. Not rehearsed, not polished, just raw. I didn't answer right away. The silence stretched between us. The kind that used to scare me, but now it felt different. It felt powerful. "I appreciate that," I said finally. "But I don't need you to see me anymore. I already do." Her eyes filled and she nodded slowly. As we turned to leave, she whispered, "You really changed, Grace." I looked back once. "No, Mom. I just stopped believing you when you said I couldn't." The door closed behind me, and the weight of years lifted with it. Back in the car, Andrew reached over, his hand finding mine. The city stretched out ahead, bright, alive, full of noise. Somewhere behind me, my past stayed quiet for the first time. I smiled. You know what's funny? What? He asked. That empty hall was the best thing that ever happened to me. Andrew chuckled. Because it showed everyone who you really are. I shook my head because it showed me. And as the skyline glowed against the afternoon sun, I realized I didn't need a crowd or applause or even revenge. I just needed that moment when the world finally stopped underestimating me. And that moment had already